Thank you so much for inviting me into your community today to talk about some of the topics that are near and dear to all of our lives and also make up a significant proportion of how I spend my time on an everyday basis, thinking about how all of us can more readily navigate trade-offs between time and money, and how we should be making decisions around time and money to maximize happiness. Now, given the audience today, I am also paying a little bit more attention than usual to some of my data on social and romantic relationships. Now, perhaps you think about all of the positive ways in which you spend time on an everyday basis, engaging in volunteering, spending time socializing with friends and family, or exercising. However, if you're like many people, myself included, maybe when you think about time, you're thinking about all of the things on your to-do list and this sense of feeling overwhelmed. If you also do feel like there's never enough time in the day, you're not alone. Over 80% of working adults all over the world report feeling time poor, like there's too many things to do and not enough time in the day to do them. These feelings of time poverty can have negative effects for our happiness, our social relationships, and our physical health. People who feel time poor are less likely to have positive romantic relationships, are more likely to get divorced. And in one study that I conducted with 3 million Americans, these feelings of having too many things to do and not enough time in the day to do them had stronger negative effects on happiness than unemployment. This is consistent with a trend that we've been observing using Gallup World Poll data, suggesting that all over the world, despite the fact that we have more money and our countries are wealthier than they have been in previous decades, stress is on the rise despite financial prosperity, although more unequal in society, generally increasing. So the quality of life has increased, but we're feeling more busier than ever. I want to first present a few trends that you might be experiencing in the context of your own life. I saw in the chat window someone mentioned that the pandemic has also changed the way they feel or their relationship with time and how they think they're spending time. In some of my colleagues' data, we see that this forced experiment of working from home has created greater time stress as opposed to alleviate it. So though we're not commuting or traveling for work travel can also, of course, be time consuming and stressful as well. But on average, looking around the globe, our work days have increased by about 8% or 50 minutes. And if you feel like you're sending more emails, that is because you are. So using Microsoft Analytics data, my colleagues found that we are in fact sending more emails now than we did before the pandemic, and often outside of regular working hours. We are also having more meetings. In the virtual environment where every conversation has to be a meeting, we find ourselves in back-to-back Zoom events this one is very pleasant, but some of the ones I get trapped on are not always what feels like a positive use of time, but they're totally a necessity when we're in a virtual work environment. In data I've been collecting with over 40,000 respondents in 44 states and 88 countries, I found that remote workers all over the world, regardless of their background or station in life, report feeling less productive right now and are engaging in more unproductive work time. Unsurprisingly, this is especially true for employees with kids who are feeling particularly unproductive. And that distraction is a major challenge. Now, I think given that so many of you have digital platforms, digital distraction and technology disruption of leisure is something that's front and center of your minds, and also something that I see a lot of in my data as a precipitating factor of time poverty. So we see in this forced experiment of working from home that people who are feeling particularly unproductive, tired, and stressed are those who are feeling like they have more distractions in their lives. Now, of course, this is also due to the fact that we have childcare demands that are additional that we didn't before. So we're completing more chores and necessities like caregiving now than we did prior to the pandemic. Again, working moms and women are disproportionately affected in my data. And actually, if you extrapolated these data to the next upcoming calendar year, we would see that women would complete about 12 more days of cleaning as compared to working men in the upcoming year, and have 5 fewer days of active leisure like socializing or volunteering as compared to men. Both activities are good for happiness. As I mentioned, so what these kind of studies suggest is that we're feeling more pressed for time than ever. We're feeling more distracted and more fatigued than ever before. And this digital distraction matters in part because it is a precipitating factor of time poverty. When we constantly respond to our technology, the 1 hour of leisure that we might have had in the evening gets distracted into small units of free time that are easily squandered and lost. This is known as the concept of time confetti. It also pulls us out of the present and into other things we could or should be doing. So there's been some research suggesting that even having our alerts on while we're trying to engage in meaningful activities with our kids, like going to a local science museum, can undermine the meaning that we derive from these experiences, because our technology reminds us of the opportunity cost of all the things we could or should be doing. So a very simple, concrete takeaway is to turn your distractions and alerts off while you're trying to be present in the moment. Of course, this has implications for dating and relationships. If alerts are on and technology is out, this can undermine the meaning and satisfaction, the presence that we bring to our interactions, which are especially important when we're trying to form and cultivate new relationships, and in particular romantic relationships. So we want to be thinking about using technology as a tool to build connections, as so many of you already do, and try to limit or constrain the extent to which we use technology on an everyday basis, while also simultaneously trying to engage in a pleasurable or pleasant activity. Now, despite all this distraction created by increased demands, by workplace shifts, while we're all working from home, we have more meetings, we have more email. And despite the fact that technology does play a role in these feelings of distraction and time poverty, I'm a social psychologist by training, and some of the best research out there suggests that there are small decisions we can all make around the margins to live a happier life and to reclaim control over our time. So Ed Diener, famous happiness professor at UVA, says, happiness is an ongoing process of fresh challenges, and it takes the right attitudes and activities to be happy. Stated differently, there's a lot of stuff under our own control. About 1/3 that of our happiness is determined by intentional activities on an everyday basis that we can put into place in our own life to manage our time and be more present in the moment and attentive to our social relationships and also to our broader goals in life. So the 4 strategies I talk about in my book and have researched quite extensively are as follows. So the first is cultivating a time-first mindset. So I've shown over and over again in my data that individuals who say that they're willing to sacrifice money, such as by working fewer hours to have more free time, as compared to individuals who say that they're willing to sacrifice time to have more money, are happier. People who put time first and prioritize time over money also spend more time socially interacting on an everyday basis. In one study, I used the fast friends questions. They also use these to try to facilitate closeness. So there are a list of questions that you can ask to try to that escalate in terms of how intimate they are, and they can help to cultivate close relationships between 2 strangers. So we use these fast friends questions in the context of a lab experiment and found that people who are more money focused, more efficiency focused, spend 18% less time going through those questions, which we know promote closeness, as compared to people who are more time focused, and that this held controlling even for factors that might otherwise account for the results, like extroversion. So stated differently, time first, putting time first and having a time first mindset can promote greater social connection. So these were the results I just talked about. People who value time over money spend 18% more time capitalizing on social interactions in the context of everyday life, whereas people who think about the economic value of their time and are really concerned about money and productivity are less likely and less easily able to capitalize on social relationship contexts in their everyday lives. We've also looked at how these time-first mindsets can predict relationship satisfaction. So we do see that couples who have at least one time-focused partner do report greater overall relationship satisfaction. And it's best if this preference matches, unsurprisingly, across romantic relationships. So couples who both put time first, for example, are usually experiencing greater relationship satisfaction. But if one individual in the couple does put time first and the other one more puts work and productivity first, as long as they're having open, active dialogue about these preferences and the reasons for them, then they are also more likely to experience greater relationship satisfaction. Whereas people who are in relationships where both are valuing money over time, we do see higher rates of relationship conflict in our data. Mike Norton and I, who I think some of you know, who's one of my colleagues at HBS, have also run a set of studies showing that even the perception of time and similarity in the perception of time can predict relationship satisfaction. So we asked romantic couples to click the upcoming page when they thought a minute has gone by. And interestingly, there's all this variability. It's like a measure of patience for how long people think a minute takes. And what we see from these data is that couples who are more similar, they think a minute takes a similar amount of time or are less likely to fight. And so you can, some of the questions that we can pose to our participants to get at these time money preferences are whether people prefer a direct flight or an indirect flight. There's a sample item on the screen here. So flight A is a flight that flies directly. Flight B is $500 cheaper, but requires a 2-hour layover each way. We've also have scenarios around rent. So would you rather pay more money to live closer to your place of employment or less money to live further away? And of course, there's also this idea of maximizing versus satisficing. So are you someone who wants to research to get the best deal or go to the best restaurants? You're gonna check your phone to choose a restaurant, and you're not gonna eat at a restaurant until you've checked your phone and figured out the best place to eat? Or are you someone that's more easygoing and willing to try a restaurant without doing extensive research? And interestingly, people's responses on this measure can predict relationship conflict, perhaps unsurprisingly, if they're discordant. So the second strategy I talk about outside of cultivating a time first mindset to help us all reclaim our time and live a happier life is this idea of finding time. So we want to be thinking about being as deliberate with our temporal portfolio as we are with our financial portfolio. And in general, we want to be thinking about maximizing the amount of time that we spend in positive or productive activities and minimizing the amount of time we spend in stressful or unproductive activities. This, in very typical HBS fashion, is in a 2x2 quadrant. But actually, what's very interesting is activities that are stressful and unproductive, like getting to the bottom of our inbox, are the kinds of activities that we're more likely to engage in when we're feeling stressed out. So one way of reclaiming time and giving more careful attention to other goals that we have in life, especially when we're feeling stressed, is to be particularly attentive to the time that we spend in activities that are both stressful and unproductive, especially when we're feeling busy. We might want to check a next email or get to the next thing on our to-do list to cross it off. But this, of course, is coming at a cost to our time affluence more overall. Another strategy that I've done a lot of research on is this idea of funding time. So this is just one strategy to find time, is to put proactive time blocks on your calendar. And we've shown that this can significantly reduce burnout and increase productivity. Now, another set of findings within this idea of finding time, of course, is saying no. I think what could be pretty interesting from an advice perspective of how you related to how do you decline social invitations, we find that although it's very intuitive to say you don't want to do something because you don't have time and thinking that that's a pretty good excuse, we find that this is actually the worst excuse to provide. So when we say we don't have time, the other person, because we all have 24 hours in a day, assumes that we don't want to do whatever it is that they're asking. If we don't want to do something or we can't do something, it's much better to give an energy-related excuse or no excuse at all than to reject a social invitation by saying that you don't have the time. This strategy is the one that I just mentioned, is this idea of funding time. So we also want to think about having more control over our schedules by, of course, buying ourselves out of things that fall into that bottom left quadrant that are both stressful and unproductive. And we can do that by giving up some of our financial resources to buy time. This doesn't involve necessarily a lot of money. So my college students have readily put this strategy into practice by purchasing things such as coffee makers that automatically brew their coffee in the morning or use bikes so they don't have to walk to work. And in my experimental research, just as little as $40 is enough to take control of our time, to feel more in control of it, and to gain greater happiness. We also find consistent evidence that couples who make time-saving purchases together report greater relationship satisfaction, and that this is especially true right now during the work from home period during COVID. So as I mentioned, we're all feeling more distracted. We have more demands at work. We're living at work, working from home, however you want to see it. And we're engaging in, it's harder to go to the market economy for support. Our kids might be at home. Maybe we don't have a consistent or reliable childcare or babysitter right now. And so we're finding that couples are experiencing greater relationship satisfaction benefits than usual for making time-saving purchases. However, this comes with a couple of key caveats. you have to make these purchases together with your partner. If one partner gifts a time-saving purchase to another partner and it highlights chore discrepancy, so very concretely, what my dad used to do growing up, which wasn't the greatest idea, now in retrospect I have data to prove it, is he used to buy my mom house cleaning vouchers for a house cleaning service during Christmas, and really my mom just wanted him to do it instead. And so this was highlighting a chore discrepancy in the relationship that would create a lot of stress and animosity between my parents. Similarly, we see this in the data. So you want to advise couples, and in your own relationship, make these decisions together, make time-saving purchases together, and then try to spend that quality time together with your romantic relationship partner. This is more likely to pay off for happiness than trying to gift a time-saving device to your spouse.
So the last strategy I want to talk about is this idea of reframing time. So as I mentioned briefly, we often think of leisure and social relationships as lazy, and we don't always take full advantage of the opportunities that we have in our free time to really capitalize and experience the happiness benefits. So one way that we can fill our free time with activities that are satisfying is to focus more on, and even this could be a recommendation that you might give couples or hear from couples, is to engage in active leisure as part of downtime as compared to passive. So we've done a lot of research looking at large-scale survey data, trying to understand what kinds of activities are those that bring the greatest joy and satisfaction. And what we find is active leisure, exercising, socializing, volunteering, helping the community. These are activities that promote greater happiness, greater relationship satisfaction, even at really low levels. So even the difference of spending half an hour more engaged in active leisure produces sizable happiness benefits that are similar in magnitude to making $50,000 or $60,000 more of income. So even these small changes around the margins can have really noticeable effects on happiness. One very concrete strategy we can all take to gain more satisfaction from our leisure is to treat upcoming time off that we have with our social and romantic partners like a vacation. Make it special. A new paper just came out showing that simply thinking about our upcoming weekend like a vacation, in the absence of actually having a vacation or doing anything different with your time, can help you disconnect from your technology and enjoy your free time more. You savor the moment more when you're thinking about free time as a vacation as opposed to just another weekend. And we finally need to engage in reflection about what quality time means both to yourself and to you and your partner. This is going to look different for everyone. For some people, maybe vegging on the couch is really the best form of quality time, but this is something that couples and individuals have to really think about at a dyadic and individual level. In my data, it doesn't matter what people are doing with their free time. When they feel like they're engaging in quality time, they feel supported by people they care about, they are in a positive mood, and they are present in the moment. They're not distracted. And those activities that facilitate this quality time will look different for everyone. Couple of other dating related insights that I wanted to share just in my course of my data. We conducted a nationally representative sample, and we saw that being punctual was one of the top characteristics that people looked for in a partner, given how valuable our time is. And we also saw in our data that arriving 30 minutes late was rated as unattractive in a potential date as not showing up at all. That was a cute one. And I think I want to end this presentation on this idea that focusing on time is not selfish, although we're often told that economic productivity and financial success should be where we're devoting all of our energy and attention. What I see over and over again in my data is people who are time focused invest more in their social relationships, more in their communities, and are more present in the moment with people they care about. So we all need to remind ourselves, especially right now, given there's so much stress in the environment, everything is so uncertain because of the economic situation that we're in, that it's even more important now than ever to focus on free time and to truly disconnect. Cleo Wade, a poet author that I really enjoy, says we take care of ourselves by lightening up and not being so hard on ourselves. At times, life seems to be one never-ending to-do list, but we must learn to disrupt the flood of life's demands, to replenish our energy so we can fully show up for all of our passions and responsibilities. very concrete strategies we can all try. We need breaks, boundaries, and transitions in the virtual environment more than ever. Blocking 30 minutes between meetings will give you that time to reach out to a social connection, to reach out to someone new in your social network. So make sure you're taking breaks and having boundaries between work and life while working from home.